You know that future where a robot flips your burger, an automated chef tosses your salad, and your coffee shows up without a single human touching it? Well, that future isn't some far-off sci-fi dream. It is happening right now in restaurants all over the world. But behind all that shiny, efficient technology, there is a massive, hidden crisis brewing, and it could totally reshape our society. Okay, let's get into it. This quote right here from the former CEO of McDonald's USA, it just lays it all out there, doesn't it? This isn't just about cool new gadgets. Nope, this is about a cold, hard economic calculation. The second a machine becomes cheaper than a person, businesses are going to make a choice. And that choice, well, it has consequences that ripple out way, way beyond the kitchen. So to really wrap our heads around what's at stake here, this is our game plan. First, we're going to look at just how fast these robot restaurants are taking over. Then we'll dive into the history of this whole automation debate. After that, we'll uncover the hidden tax crisis that almost no one is talking about. We'll explore the kind of wild idea of making robots pay taxes. And finally, we'll talk about the massive choice we all have to make about our automated future.
All right, first things first, let's get a real sense of how big this trend actually is. Because we're not talking about one or two quirky cafes. This is a massive global industry, and it's growing at an absolutely incredible speed.
Just last year, in 2023, the global market for fully automated restaurants was already worth a staggering $8.5 billion. I mean, that's more than the entire economy of some countries, all focused on this one thing. And as huge as that number is, believe me, it's where it's going that will really blow your mind. By 2032, that number is expected to more than triple, hitting over $28 billion. That is a gigantic leap in less than a decade. This isn't some slow, gradual change. This is a tidal wave. And this chart really shows you the engine behind that explosion. The market's growing at a rate of 14.4% every single year. You know, in the business world, that is an incredibly aggressive, sustained rate of growth. So what's pouring gasoline on this fire? Well, it's kind of a perfect storm. Rising labor costs are a huge one, just like that McDonald's CEO said. Businesses are always looking for more efficiency. And hey, robots can work 24/7 without complaining. They can create a super smooth customer experience, they make fewer mistakes, and of course, the pandemic created this huge demand for contactless everything. At the end of the day, it all adds up to one thing: major cost savings. Now, all this change brings up a really old fear, right? The idea that machines are coming to take all our jobs. It feels super modern, but the truth is, we've basically been having this exact same conversation for over 200 years. I mean, think about it. Way back in the 1800s, you had the Luddites smashing machines they thought would make them useless. In the 1930s, the famous economist John Maynard Keynes actually gave this fear a name: technological unemployment. And then in 1962, President Kennedy said automation was the single biggest challenge his country faced. Every single time society figured it out. So the real question is this so-called fourth industrial revolution, the one that's driven by AI and robots that can actually think and learn, is it fundamentally different from every other tech revolution we've been through? Okay, this slide tells an incredible story. Look at this. In 1990, the three biggest companies in Detroit were worth about $36 billion, and they employed 1.2 million people. Now, fast forward to 2014. The three biggest companies in Silicon Valley were worth over $1 trillion. That's 30 times more money. But they only employed 137,000 people. That's almost 90% fewer workers. We are creating wealth on a scale we've never seen before, but we're doing it with a tiny fraction of the human labor.
And that brings us right back to Keynes' original point. He basically said it's a race between how fast we can get rid of old jobs versus how fast we can create new ones. And what that last slide suggests is that maybe for the first time in history, we might actually be losing that race.
And that race brings us to the real heart of this whole thing. Because while everyone is busy debating the future of jobs, we're totally missing a much bigger, much more immediate crisis that automation is creating right under our noses. Just think about it for a second. It's so simple. A robot doesn't get a paycheck. It doesn't pay income tax. It doesn't chip in for Social Security or Medicare. It doesn't go out and buy stuff, generating sales tax. So when a human worker gets replaced by a machine, all of their tax payments, they just vanish. So who's going to fill that hole? This visual just makes the problem crystal clear. Our entire government, everything from roads and schools to the military and social programs, it's all built on a foundation of taxes from human workers. You can see it right there. The biggest chunks of government money come from labor taxes. Corporate taxes, they're a much smaller piece of the pie. So what happens when that foundation starts to crack?
So, let's talk about the scale of this potential collapse. According to a study by McKinsey, if we automate just half of the jobs that we already have the technology to automate, we could wipe out $2.7 trillion in yearly wages, just in the US. Think about that for a second. All the tax revenue, all the money for schools, hospitals, roads, from $2.7 trillion in paychecks, just gone.
And here is the truly wild part. Our tax system actually encourages this. It's a triple whammy. First, and this is the obvious one, companies don't pay payroll taxes like Social Security for their robots. Second, they actually get a tax break. A robot is a capital asset, which means companies can write off its value over time, lowering their tax bill. And third, business equipment is often exempt from the sales taxes that you and I pay every day. So not only is the government losing money, it's actually paying companies to get rid of the very workers who fund it.
Okay, I know this sounds pretty bleak, but there's a growing movement among economists and policy thinkers who are talking about a really radical solution. What if we just rewired our entire tax system for the age of automation?
A lot of this incredible thinking is coming from researchers at places like the University of Surrey. They're asking the really tough questions, like how do you fix a system that was built for human labor in a world where the labor is now a machine?
And the main goal here isn't to stop progress or to outlaw robots. Not at all. It's to create something they call tax neutrality. The whole idea is to level the playing field. A company should choose a robot because it's genuinely better at the job, not because our tax code gives the robot a giant, unfair advantage over a person.
So how could we actually do that? Well, there are a few big ideas on the table. We could just get rid of the tax deductions companies get for the robots that replace people. Or we could go even further and create a special automation tax for any company that replaces a person with a machine. You could also flip it around and create new tax breaks specifically for hiring humans. A more complicated idea is something called a corporate self-employment tax, which would make companies pay Social Security taxes for their robots. Or you could just raise the overall corporate tax rate to shift the burden back from people onto capital.
All of these ideas really lead us to one final point, and to a huge choice about the kind of world we want to build. The technology itself isn't good or bad. It's what we decide to do with it, how we manage it, that will define our future.
You know, the physicist Stephen Hawking, he warned that we're basically facing two possible futures. In one future, we figure out new ways to tax all this incredible wealth that automation creates. We can use that money to fund retraining for workers, to build better social safety nets, and to create a future with more opportunity for everyone. But in the other future, the people who own the machines fight against any kind of wealth sharing. The tax system collapses, social programs disappear, and we end up with the biggest gap between the rich and the poor in all of human history.
And really, that's the question we're all left with. There is absolutely no doubt that automation is going to create an insane amount of wealth. The technology is already here. The real question is, who is that wealth for? Are we going to be smart enough to adapt our economic system to make sure this new prosperity helps everyone? Or are we just going to stand by and watch it create a world of unimaginable wealth for a tiny few at the expense of everyone else? The choice is ours to make.